Good morning. This sermon's dad decided I'd do just wandering around the house, so excuse me as I wander around. But you should have read the readings: Isaiah chapter 64, verses 1 to 9, and then Mark 13:24 to the end. That will help to know what I'm talking about. But it's entitled Brave. Are you feeling brave today? You see, when we light our Advent candle once again this year, or open the first of our Advent calendar doors or presents on Tuesday, we are in fact offering an invitation to God to step into our lives. Like all things, somewhere down the line, we have lost the meaning of all that we do. The world has taken hold of our celebrations and our practices and made them its own. Some might argue that we took many of the world's pagan practices and beliefs and made them ours. Yes, we did, but I would rather see light through the darkness than darkness dimming the light. Whilst the shadow remains, there is hope, because a shadow is created from light. We just need to remove the things between us and it that cast the shadows to see the fullness of God's light. As I believe firmly that all things belong and are created by God, then everything was His first. He wants us to reclaim what belongs to Him. Shockingly, when I typed in the Advent into Google, the first Advent calendar that appeared was that of a chocolate male genitals. In the pagan world, this was a common image of fertility, and many gods were worshipped through these images, but it reminded them of their beginning. It's as basic as that. These erotic body images represented the start of their life. I'm not sure that's why the world is so obsessed with the same today. It's more about personal pleasure, I guess. I will not give you a slide for one of these if you're in church listening to this. Just use your imagination. But God breaks in even here and reminds us that our beginning goes back way before the bedroom. On the first Advent, the angel appeared to Mary and told her that even as a virgin, having had no human sexual relationship, she was now carrying God's child. Is that so amazing? If we know anything about God, I don't think so. For God took from the ground dust and formed man. Then he took from the man one of his ribs and formed woman. Genesis 2:7 and verses 21 and 22 if you want to look it up. There is no human conception here. When we worship God, we don't need a fertility image because we came from the dust, formed by God's own hand, and we will one day return to the dust, a reminder of what we were created from. You are wonderfully made. Be proud that God made you man and woman, because He ordained that as the fundamental, pivotal point of our nature. Again, the world would have us deny this and calls for one identity. This truly denies God His creative distinctiveness. It is not biblical at all, but a postmodern attempt to diminish God's plan in our lives. And whilst much of the world then and now worships other gods and ideologies, the psalmist got it right. We quote this frequently, and I like this a lot, excuse the pun, because it is so earthly. Psalm 139, verses 13 to 15, from the New International Version of the Bible. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. I'll read that one again. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Is that not just mind-blowing? Before your parents, our parents, even set eyes on each other, God knew us and loved us, because it goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. when God first picked us up from the dust, from the earth, and started moulding it together. The first Advent prepares the earth to meet with those same hands again. Hands that would reshape us and point us back onto the right path, where darkness had hidden God from the world. Now, this immaculate conception would once again bring light. That is why we light candles during Advent, week by week, possibly day by day, to remind us. They remind us that the light has come, and more so, that it will come again, where darkness has no place to hide. Advent is not simply a countdown to Christmas. It is so much deeper than that, and it is a real shame if we miss that. It is a reminder of the first Christmas, when Christ came down, but it is a reminder that we need to keep the lights burning brightly as we wait his second arrival. We look at this some weeks ago with the parable of the young girls and their oil lamps and the consequences of not being ready for Jesus' second coming. This is a theme that Jesus repeats in various ways in the Gospels. And as we truly look at the church today, yet alone the world around us, you would hardly believe that Jesus spent so much time warning us, preparing us to be ready, to be a constant state of Advent. We are exceptionally good at looking back at Christmas. We are less good at looking at where we are today in our lives, in our relationship with Christ. A lot has been made of the right to celebrate Christmas this year. It has dominated our headlines. From a church point of view, that should be a good thing. But I don't believe it comes from that angle at all. And we now, as a nation, will take a huge risk and allow ourselves to meet up for 5 days over the holiday period. In theory, then, our services on Christmas morning should be jam-packed. We have argued that Christmas is so important to us as a nation, whilst other faiths have had their celebrations diminished. Mind you, we did lose the biggest of all, Easter. We have been allowed to celebrate, so let's do so. But will we really celebrate the birth of Christ and what that event meant to the world? I'm sorry, the answer is simply no. We might get all festive and sing some carols, but on Christmas Day, as the number crunching proves year on year, our services will be least attended compared to our normal Sunday service. Why? Because we have other things to do. Don't get me wrong, I want to see my family as much, desperately as much as anyone else. But don't call that Christmas. Call it our annual gathering, a celebration of family. That's why it has been so important to risk these 5 days. It protects our well-being and our mental health. It clearly is not about our spiritual well-being. Otherwise, I'll be making all sorts of arrangements to safely get people into church on Christmas Day. Yes, there are other services around Christmas that people attend, but it is the same way that they traditionally go to the pantomime each year. Has people's faith just become a pantomime? Has the church succumbed to providing entertainment over spiritual challenge? Be careful. Indeed, be careful, because Advent reminds us that Jesus is behind you. And all the people shouted, "Oh, no, he isn't." God says, yes, he is. The diocese wants us to ask what the Spirit is saying to the church in these times of COVID. Maybe it is clear. Stop the pantomime and get back to the gospel of truth. Of course, if I said that to the diocese, they would argue back that we have to give the people what they want. I've heard that said in conversation already in one Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago. I remind everyone again what happened when someone else asked that very question. And it's a reading from Luke 23, verses 20 to 24. Wanting to see Jesus released, Pilate appealed to them again. But they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I have him punished, and then release him. But the loud shouts, they intensely demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. Is the church simply here to give people what they want? In today's gospel reading, there are two warnings. One was relevant to the disciples at that time. The hour was unknown to them, when Jesus would be taken from them. They had become comfortable with having Jesus leading and teaching them. They had their own expectations about where everything was heading. Jesus was warning them that he would one day soon be taken from them, and then everything would be in their hands. The second can be argued to be talking about Jesus' second coming. Do not fall asleep. Keep watch. Be ready. Do not let yourself get caught out by this world and be found doing something else when Jesus suddenly stands before you and says, "Follow me." There is no time to stop what you are doing then, because it's immediate and an instant response. No turning back, looking back, saying, "Just 1 minute, please, Jesus." Advent then is about being ready, being prepared. And if we are, then we can recite with Isaiah the verses we have read with confidence. Think about it. Can you say, which is an invitation to God, to Jesus, are you brave enough to say this day? "Come down, you heavens, so that the mountains, the foundations of the earth may tremble before you. Set our lives on fire in this instant and make your name known, so that all who have turned away from you may quake before you, and those who have prepared themselves might be saved." This is a brave prayer because it calls God to come now. Are we ready for that prayer? If we are not, then he might just come anyway. That's what Jesus is warning his disciples. Be ready whenever. Then we come back to what I was saying about being formed by God. If we truly want to be ready for Jesus' return, if we truly want to celebrate a true Christmas and not the pantomime, then Isaiah reminds us that we must be like clay that is drawn up from the dust. We must allow ourselves to be molded in God's hand. He will then do what he likes with us. Isaiah pleads for those who have, even in his day, turned away from God, as he prepares them to meet with Jesus incarnate, in other words, in flesh and bones. We broke his bones and bruised and tore his flesh, and yet he still forgives. If we prepare ourselves to meet with him again, then all darkness is terminated by eternal light. We light a candle to remind us so, as we prepare to step out of the shadows, because we are brave. Amen.